Carla. I'm a digital strategist spearheading CRO and experimentation in Spiralytics. I'm based in the Philippines, and one of the challenges I've encountered in the last few years, apart from explaining what CRO is how to make experimentation work, even for low traffic sites. I don't have to tell you that it's very difficult to run experiments and tests on them. In fact, you'll read or hear people discourage you from doing so. And that's probably sound insane advice. Our experiment design, should we proceed, would probably not have enough power for us to confidently say that our results are accurate and can be trusted. But I don't think that should stop us from trying to figure out how we can improve a site and a business's overall performance, even if they are still technically low on users. In my head, if different statistical schools of thought or methodology answer different questions, then perhaps changing the questions or switching the angle or shifting the purpose of your test ideas heavily based on research will allow us to actually execute impactful experiments even for low traffic sites. Let's start this session by addressing the elephant in the room. Should we really put that much of an effort to attempt any form of testing and CRO for these projects or businesses with very little power? Statistics and data science reminds us that we need to satisfy certain sets of criteria to begin and be able to trust and replicate the results that we will get. We have to consider power, confidence level, statistical significance, minimum detectable effect, duration, hypothesis, and even other things that make any beginner very nauseous and scared. Maybe even consider stopping before they begin. Trust me, I've been there and I'm still having this dilemma, but that didn't really stop me from trying. I realized that working with high traffic sites and high traffic pages is such a luxury. With my roots in digital marketing, I understand how much challenging it is to grow a site and how much resource needs to be put in there to be able to get that goal. So, yes, I think it's worth putting an effort to try and figure out how we can do even small strides to make an impact through CRO and experimentation. In the following slides, I will try to share reasons why we need to take low traffic site testing seriously, or at least take a step back and think about how we approach it. Seasoned experimenters will definitely have other suggestions or other ideas and workarounds so we can have statistically valid tests and results, or at least a way to balance risk and errors as best possible in the real world. If you get a chance, um, check out Ryan Thomas's session from last year. I think he even wrote an article about it. It's really helpful, you guys. Anyway, think of the next few minutes as the things. Think of the next few ideas that I will present to you in the next few minutes as a backup to your backup plan. When you just can't quite get there yet, and there's a lot of friction or doubt from different stakeholders. So to my friends in data sciences or statistics and even experimentation, please forgive me. I am slightly going to deviate from the standards, but you're more than welcome to stick with us and share your thoughts. So, just so we're in the same page, since I might throw it a lot in the next few minutes, or just to give some context to what I'm talking about, this is how I would bucket a small, medium, and high traffic website. Informally, at least, based on my observed patterns. Of course, some of the pages we will have to test may have fewer users since we don't expect everyone to go through all our pages. No? So distributions might be a little different. Um, Much of whom I have had the pleasure to work with in the last years would typically fall under the small and medium traffic websites. To some, this might sound like a negative thing, but right there, at least in my perspective, is the perfect opportunity for CRO and experimentation to flex its muscle and help starter and growing businesses make better business decision, despite less power.
Hi, This is Romo Santiago, founder of Experiment Nation. To celebrate our 5th anniversary, we are holding weekly giveaways until November 29th. Prizes include books, free consultation services, and even a t-shirt. To enter, simply join Experiment Nation Slack and fill out the entry form that can be found in the description or through the QR code on the screen. Now back to the session.
For me, CRO and experimentation for low traffic sites seem like a chicken and egg problem. We need to find sizable traffic or users to get reliable results from experiments. But how can businesses get to attract users or general traffic if their business is just full of friction, full of problems and other issues that maybe they're blinded to see, or maybe they're just in the startup phase or the growth phase where they are trying to really push for growth and willing to experiment, but they know they just can't do it if they're going to stick um, stick with the purest form of experimentation. So will they be able to just go ahead and do it? Should they be stuck? Which one should go first? If you take another angle, it doesn't make sense to invest in ads or any form of paid marketing without being conscious of the potential flaws of a page, or maybe your site, or maybe your whole sales process or sales funnel has. They won't really convert. But how do you know if there's a flaw if you can't do any form of experimentation or testing? It doesn't have to be full-blown CRO. Which approach do you think would they do? um if you take another angle, there's SEO and CRO. Which one should go first? you know what marketing technique should researching be the first one to go if you have a product? It's like, which one should go first? I don't know. In a perfect world, we probably won't have to even think about this problem. My point here is just that I don't think we should wait for a certain metric to get high enough or low enough to make us eligible to get started with some form of CRO and experimentation. Much like a funnel or a customer journey or whatever marketing model you're following, or even a testing roadmap, we need to adapt it to the audience maturity level. What I realized, speaking to clients and potential clients, is that all are very excited to hear the buzzwords of growth, improvements, more and more conversions or leads. That's the hook that gets them to inquire or even continue the conversation. But there are a few who are willing to endure the birthing pains, and to these few, the challenge really is to break it down and make it palatable to their higher ups, maybe to their C-suite, so that they can appreciate the things testing and CRO in general can do for them. To me, when we try to break down CRO as a program, these would be the milestones or KPIs, if you will. 'Cause there's a lot that can help us determine if businesses are maturing through a CRO program. The first two levels on this diagram, while it looks very simple, is not as easy to achieve. It takes a lot of education, re-education, compromise even, patience, and a lot of creativity to get us maturing to move to the next stage. To me, the purpose of low traffic testing, or when you're working with a starting business, is the need to shift to an open doors and learn as much mindset that will drive us to complete level 1 of the roadmap, testing familiarity and acceptance. The overarching goals of designing low traffic tests in my head are threefold. I'd like to help people and businesses get used to the idea and the experience of experimentation. When we expose people to seemingly small but targeted tests, the idea of testing becomes second nature, and it will promote a culture of experimentation where all teams can get involved, right? That's our level 3, remember. We need also our stakeholders or even ourselves to get a feel of the playing field. We need to get our hands dirty because failed tests are still learning. Uh, we should want them as much as we want and enjoy winning tests. And because we're saying failed tests are also learnings, then Essentially, number three is we learn what not to do. This will be our process of elimination. And assuming our company only really allocated maybe 10% of its resources to testing, or maybe even less, failing the tests wouldn't be as costly as permanently launching something that ultimately flunks. You know, imagine the resources you'll waste without some form of testing, right? Now, when we talk about optimization for low traffic sites, these five things immediately come to mind. User testing, surveys, FGDs, method marketing, A/B testing. There are a lot of tools out there that are great and easy to use, but buying tools doesn't mean you're doing CRO. All these five options have their strengths and weaknesses, but all of them may present bias and other errors. Well, this is true even for high traffic sites. From false negatives, false positives, or even uh, correct data correct data collected but wrong questions. you know um this is the danger of doing experiments, even for both high and low traffic sites. My point is just, it's not perfect. However you do it, it's not going to be 100% accurate. This is precisely the reason for us considering stepping back and reminding ourselves the questions we want to answer and what the purpose of our tests are. I'm not saying that any of these approaches are wrong. You can use all of them if you have the resources, by all means, but we have to understand the caveats or the faults or the possible downsides of these tests before deciding which one to go with or which combination to go with to get us the best possible results within our limitations. In all these, we will always have the problem again of power and bias. So we have to be extremely sensitive and set on the guardrails we put on them, the metrics we measure, and what we want to get out of them. From here on out, I'll focus my attention to these two methodologies, user testing and A/B testing, since what we're trying to achieve for level one is really testing acceptance and familiarity. These two might be the best combo to get us there. You can maybe add some method marketing in the mix. You've likely encountered some of it when you did your diagnostics. Anyway, so let's start. A typical A/B test requires a predefined specific sample size to assume validity. That's why it's also known as a fixed horizon test. But again, we're working with a low traffic site, so doing this approach will take you ages, months, even years to get the sample you need if we follow strict statistical protocols. And by then, your data could be polluted, or it's just not worth it at that point. What's the sense of doing that, or what's the test of executing a test that if it will delay your next steps by 2 years, 5 years? We go back to our purpose. We want businesses to acclimate with the idea of testing solutions to their problems. And well, we know user testing as a way to find problems or accept unacceptable builds or acceptable features are a cool thing. That's something we want to see immediately. So why not combine the two, and run live A/B comparisons? You get to work with your actual audiences, so I think that's a win. Um, so I'm going to share with you 6 ideas I've done with some samples to help you build and measure your tests should you decide that, in fact, this hybrid is the way to go. Please note that in almost all these cases, you will still need to compute for your baseline data. So like 7 days of users and conversions, your sample size as you'd normally do, your minimum detectable effect, and of course, your desired lift. I would even compute for the duration of the test, assuming you have full power. So this would definitely guide me, at least for me, to determine how I would modify or approach um, the testing design to fit our circumstances. I'd probably trade off some accuracy or significance to run tests within a more feasible and realistic amount of time. So, idea number one is to use upper level key events as your main KPI for tests. I know that you know that a usual A/B test would be designed from insights you've extracted from your diagnostics. You'll define a problem, create a hypothesis, everything. And before you run a test, you'll select a metric to monitor and determine whether or not your test is a success. Um, in that case, you're more likely to base your KPI from a lower funnel conversion point. Of course, this is not really an issue if your website has enough power. You know, a page or a website that maybe has about 10,000 users every day, maybe even 6,000, 5,000 users. But if you don't have that luxury, check if it's possible to use the event or action before your defined goal. And I have three reasons to explore this. One, the completion of your main goal could be the drop off or friction point of your website. If this is the case, then revisit your user journey, your overall experience, and see if there's anything wrong. Maybe you need to do a quick fix before deciding to go and test. Number two, there might be a certain audience maturity needed for a person to commit to your main goal. Remember, people are afraid of commitment. So, what's one step above that we can offer? Some people might think of this as funnel testing of some sort. And lastly, the one step above action might have more impact to the problem you're solving. It might be the direct next action from the issue. So it makes more sense to use it as your indicator. And it's likely going to help your test to have a bit more power. To give you an idea, this test that we built was an objection counter objection copy test. Uh, of course, we're talking about low powered sites, so this is a very low powered test. And the conversion counted was a click on CTA because the completion for them is not as straightforward as it looks. Our key takeaway is that selling their service is more than just showing off the results they've already had in the last few years. Um, it's highly emotional, and this test has provided us a direction on where to look and which angle to take. And doing this test help us build a case for an opportunity we could really just be turning a blind eye, and that we should spend a bit more effort on this seemingly small copy test and see if continuing so will give us an edge against our competitors. Another idea is to design an experiment like we have all the power to run the tests at full speed, you know. But the difference is we define guardrail metrics apart from achieving our main KPI to determine the winning idea. Um, the guardrail in this instance could be something like your average engagement time shouldn't drop 10, 15%. Just define what that is. Or maybe 90% of your users that land on that page should still be able to reach 50% scroll depth. So if my variant wins in this specific test, it should still pass my guardrails and be within my computed lift from my pre-test. If it didn't pass, then I'll have to continue looking. You know, if the guardrails dropped, we have to keep searching for the reason why it happened so. Just a reminder, if I haven't said it here yet, please always still do a pre-test and plan them ahead of time, even if you're working on a low traffic site. This will surely guide you with your decision making, even if it's too far off and it looks impossible. You know? Think of this A/B testing with guardrails as your sense checking test. With this setup, you can expect that the control will win most of the time. And if the control keeps winning, we keep trying to figure out why our variant keeps losing despite our previous research. So from there, we pick up what we learned and then adjust our test or expand. You know, perhaps you're not going to be very confident with the statistics of this approach, but it's great because the best practice idea or an idea that needs sense checking could be tested to give us direction or a context to why or how we can improve our brand or the product we're working on or the business in general. It will slowly transform into a very purposeful and intentional test. And we keep testing until we see consistency. So still aligned with our level one goals. In this sample here, we fixed a filtering issue and ran a form of brand-related motivation test, but ultimately we kept the control after the first test. But since the guardrails were intact and based on our post-test analysis, it seems like the variant was actually pushing users to the target pages, where we've been having some problems on when we did our initial analysis. We decided we should continue with the test, maybe expand it a little, to know which ones exactly can move the needle for us. Um, I realized that the screenshot here didn't capture the desktop preview, but the test is still running, so I won't take a peek. But overall, it's really a direction driver for us. Okay. I think this might be the third idea. And I mentioned earlier peak. We don't really encourage peaking at running experiments, as it increases our risk of getting or getting or analyzing false positive results. So by false positive, we're seeing an improvement where there is actually none. But with a sequential test, we could actually take calculated and predefined peak dates. We can define that and follow that. A sequential test is a Bayesian test method, which basically helps us decide whether or not we should change our beliefs about a problem or an opportunity. So you'll need to use this when you're trying to change how people think about something. Maybe a brand positioning test based on your analysis, or how people believe how your stakeholders believe people go through your whole customer journey from one page to another, or what have you. There are different ways for you to calculate when you'll peak. You can definitely search what flavor works best for you, but I find that using p-value boundaries work okay for me. I've had a really low traffic page be able to run a test at 12 weeks long, maximum duration. It's a little longer than I'd usually run a test, but because it will provide me with the valid data, I take that trade-off anytime versus us doing strict calculations where this would have taken more than thousands of weeks to run. Because this approach is probably the most statistically valid test method of the list I have. This will also be a little harder to manipulate and harder for starting teams to do. So approach it cautiously. For this particular case, um, this is actually coming from another test. We know the page provides highly coveted options, and we have research to back it up, but it wasn't converting as good as they think it should be. The stakeholders believe that since the units they were selling are move-in ready, there's no other queue or assistance that's needed to get people inquiring. However, based on our results, we should think again. Not because it's move-in ready, not because we're saying there are a few units left. It's enough urgency, it's enough drive for them to come running to you. The test ran for 10 weeks, maximizing the fourth predefined peak date. And we're good. We're going to launch this. Um, uh, the next idea is before and after testing, which is not to be confused with sequential testing. Honestly, considering this as a test method is kind of a stretch for me. But I do this approach when I'm pushed to a wall and there's definitely very evident issues on the website, or the page is targeted that can only be addressed by shipping an edit to the live site immediately. Think of how low-hanging fruits work. Um, I can consider being pushed to a wall too if a stakeholder is convinced that a redesign or only a revamp would solve things, and we can't change their minds. But why am I calling it before and after testing? It's mostly because it's our job um, to still continue checking, QAing, making sure that the test did not derail any progress, that the losses are mitigated. And we look for other opportunities and we're ready to revert if it's really wrong. It's our job. It's our job to do it. So it's still some form of testing. The sample is fairly straightforward, basic before and after test with periodic checkups, as you can see, completed. It's the safest way to do revamps, especially if you're really low on traffic. A go for it test is testing without p-values. So we assume that the changes we want to do really has no downside and there will be no detrimental effect if it goes wrong. Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! But not really. When I think about go for it tests, I remember this one Young Sheldon episode where young Sheldon is rethinking his take on religion because his father was in the hospital. He cited Blaise Pascal uh, and said that he has everything to gain if God exists and nothing to lose if he doesn't. So I think it perfectly encapsulates um, how we should think about go for it tests. I don't mean to offend anyone or drag religion into here, but I think it's the best way to keep remembering what it does. Um, so this go for it tests actually work like work best for no-brainer tests. You know, I think this one is a good entry point for beginner teams. It's just less complex, simpler, faster. But the trade-off is that you probably don't learn as much. It's likely a one-off idea, and it's hard to get something else out of it apart from proving a point. With this test, I realized I have quite a number of real estate examples here. Don't worry, they're not all the same. But this test I'm working with, or I worked on, is a very minimalist website. There's almost nothing on the page but photos and a few short text. And I don't think that's wrong per se, but from our analysis, people are not taking any action when they land on the page, maybe because they don't know what to do when they land there. So it seems like a no-brainer, but because it's a minimalist website, there's not a lot of things happening there. We had to test it out to help convince or prove the point to the stakeholder. And I think we're on to the last point, but we can also create landing pages for your advertising or any marketing campaign in general. Um, which I think is not really an A/B test in the strictest form. But have I been discussing strict rules in the last 26 minutes? I don't think so. So I think this is also an approach or an option for you when the website or landing page that you're working on is in a really bad shape, but you have to start your lead gen efforts. Um, this is a faster way to push out something. I think if you put heat maps on this and monitor continuously, you'll still find what else could work. And this will be your entry point to understanding what else you can implement on the other pages and at least have it ready if the client and when the client is ready to do so. Um, I have been reading this book titled The Innovation Delusion by Vincel and Russell, and I think it pretty much sums up another constant step among the options that I presented to you earlier when working with low traffic sites, that we always have to be in a maintenance mode forever. Always. What I mean by that, um, we need to be periodically checking the pages, especially if we ship out a change, because something may have changed in a certain amount of time. Perhaps because we have limited power. Um, despite all the caution, we may have shipped an error. We're humans, and even with the best assumptions, with the best computations, with the best math, we could be wrong. So we always need to keep an eye out. We need to continuously analyze so we can keep testing and keep improving. Um, there's a lot of opportunities out there, and we don't have to always conform with the standards. Don't be scared. I know the numbers could be scary, but it's your piece of the pie, it's your piece of the world, and it's our job to understand what each data point or number would be telling us. There's no blueprint or magic bullet to the success of your website or your business. We might have been taught that we should be scared if we're not reaching the minimum. But what if what we need to compare is not against other websites who have been doing this for long, but to look in and see how much we've done, how much improvement we've had over a specific amount of time. You know, um, you'll get continuously discouraged if you keep on looking benchmarks. The benchmarks are great for you to know where you stand, but after you've started your first few improvements, you start to look in and see how you're going. So if you're not getting your way, just chill out. You'll find your solid ground. You'll bank on the powers of operationalization Well, until you get enough power to do your tests. Because remember, power or website visits is such a luxury, especially if you're starting out. So use operationalization as a way for you to make bets on your technical and contextual insights. Remember, if you're unsure about something, the best approach is still to test it out. I hope I've shared something worthwhile today. I've went a little over time, and I'll catch you guys again soon. Thank you.
Hi, this is Romo Santiago, founder of Experiment Nation. To celebrate our 5th anniversary, we are holding weekly giveaways until November 29th. Prizes include books, free consultation services, and even a t-shirt. To enter, simply join Experiment Nation Slack and fill out the entry form that can be found in the description or through the QR code on the screen.